Welcome to Aviation This Week on Channels Television. I'm Bukola Joe Okitumbi. The situation in Nigeria's domestic air travel sector paints a picture that all is not well with the industry. From the skyrocketing cost of aviation fuel, plus the announcement by Nigeria's oldest carrier suspending scheduled passenger operations owing to the challenging operating environment on its daily operations, plus the airline operators of Nigeria asking for a review of the runway closure, plus a need for approval for a 40% fuel charge on ticket fares. On this edition, we bring you all of the issues with a focus on the domestic runway closure and its impact on flight schedules. Aircraft on the ground on the airside of the General Aviation Terminal in Lagos, an unusual sight for a busy airport. The domestic runway 18 left 36 right at the Muritala Mohammed Airport is in sight and it's not accommodating any aircraft for the next 3 months. On a closer look, there are heaps of red earth and a caterpillar at work. To be sure that the repairs is underway or not, a pilot from this group not willing to speak on camera says the rehabilitation exercise has not started. The Federal Airport Authority of Nigeria had earlier announced that it's installing airfield ground lighting system which will ensure the flights can land at night here.
You cannot land one end left in the night. Now the contractor is back. He was to finish March, but the cabling he has is low quality. He said he must bring new one. Now he said by June, July, we should be through with the... So after 9 years, we have fixed all these backlogs that people abandoned. And then we are doing the ones that nobody started and abandoned, like the budget handling, the air conditioning system. Central, we are procuring a new one. We contacted the main airfield lighting contractors in Europe, AGBJ, to come and overhaul the whole airfield lighting system that was not overhauled in 2 years. That's also in the process. So our commitment is to go beyond our normal responsibility. We are fixing things to make sure that those that come after us will have a much easier and simpler responsibility.
With the runway closed, aircraft have to taxi to the international airport runway to take off. Perhaps another burden for domestic carriers who are already reeling under the burden of costly and not readily available aviation fuel, one that is testing the holding capacity of domestic airlines.
You have to find a way to ensure that your revenue is ahead of your operating costs. If your revenue goes below your operating costs for a sustained period, then you're on your way out. So we are doing everything possible to continue to derive revenue that pays for the operation. The problem is you're basically right now selling tickets to buy fuel. And there's so many other things you need to do as an airline. And to sustain all of those things, you really need to think out of the box, to be very smart with your costs, and to try to make sure that your revenue is ahead of your operating costs.
Aviation is the backbone of the economy, movement of passengers and cargo. Now the airlines is finding it very difficult because of the fuel prices. You can't imagine between January to date, aviation fuel price have been increased 10 times. It's just impossible for the airlines to survive. Well, maybe at some stage we'll be talking about co-sharing, which is very complicated and it can't happen overnight.
The double impact of the runway closure and the aviation fuel crisis are impacting on ticket fares as it has risen considerably again.
It's almost double the price, sometimes triple. And I think the worst part of this is the fact that sometimes you come in and then there's no aviation fuel. You know, your flight will be delayed because there's no fuel available. I think that's even what makes it even worse, right? We hope that the next government will know what to do.
Despite the fact that the aviation fuel is scarce in the country, the price they are charging is a bit high. Most people that can afford it before cannot actually afford it for now. If there's a way the government can assist them in bringing the fuel aviation fuel down so that the price will go down, because it's not easy. Even going by the road now, there's kidnapping everywhere in the country. People cannot travel by road again. And the only source of traveling now is through air traveling. It's more expensive than before.
Okay, can you tell us how much did you buy yours?
Mine is around 76,000, one-way ticket to Abuja. Unlike before 30-something or something that we used to buy. It's almost twice the price now.
While the runway closure has caused some form of disruptions to the aviation chain, the airline operators of Nigeria has accused the airport authority of not consulting with it before closing the runway, which is causing unsustainable additional operational costs and bringing untold inconvenience to passengers and airlines. In a press statement issued by the airline body, the closure of the runway automatically adds about 10 to 15% additional more fuel costs per sector and is unsustainable for 3 months. Given the critical concerns, AON is asking fans to review the closure of the runway and enter into discussions with the users of the runway for a procedure for the project in order to limit both the cost impact on airlines as well as disruptions to normal flight operations. On our interview segment, a retired pilot and former advisor to presidents on aviation, Captain Shehu Yal, is our guest, and it talks about the advantages that lighting up the domestic runway will bring to airlines on the long run.
For a while, it may not, but nothing is impossible. But it can come down to normal. And I think it has started coming down a little bit lower, the crude oil prices. And it's a derivative of the crude oil, so it's coming down. But the world is in a very funny situation, or sad situation, with Russia and Ukrainian situation and all whatnot. So a lot of factors beyond us in Nigeria is part of it. But I'm sure the authorities, the airlines, and all the people concerned know the importance on what to do, and they're working on it. It's sad, it's unfortunate, but what can we do? We have to live with it for the time being. But I'm sure, like any other thing, we'll get out of it. The lightning, the installation of the ILS, instrument landing system, is a great achievement. It's going to cut costs significantly to the airlines. It's going to cut operational time significantly, because the time you take to taxi from the international runway to the domestic terminal is a lot. And the fuel burn is quite an amount that affects the cost of operation. So I think, yes, it is something significant. It's something we should be grateful that is happening, and we should pray that it will finish as a time is agreed upon. And I'm sure this minister will be able to see to it with his team that is finished. Lagos, with a population of over 25 million, with almost every airline comes here 2 or 3 times, it's a place that nobody will play with. So I'm sure he's going to take it very serious, and the workers will take it serious. It's quite uncomfortable now for so many people, for the airlines, for the passengers, for the time, for the delays. But on the long run, I think it's something we should welcome and we should be happy about. That gives us 2 functional runways with lights and instrument landing system. For now, it is going to be quite reasonable, and it will serve Lagos for now. It will, with proper air traffic management. And I think we have competent controllers that can manage that traffic for the 2 of them for now.
Okay, you say it's okay for now. So do you see a situation in the future where that airport could receive another runway?
There is a possibility, but it's not something that will happen almost now. If you know what happened in other places like JFK, London Heathrow, just an airport that have a takeoff and landing like every 3 minutes, and they're able to manage it. And there are Nigerians working there, and we can manage it. All you need to do is to have the correct instruments, to have the trained personnel to handle it, and to have the equipment in your airplanes to be able to handle it. The runway is the airport, because the runway determines what and what type of aeroplanes will land in your airport. And our airport, we are lucky. The international runway is long enough, well equipped, properly lit, and that is what they're trying to give to this runway too. reasonably. The length is okay. The light they are putting, I'm sure, they know they are going to be futuristic, and they'll put a modern one. The instrument too, they are going to be futuristic because aviation is very dynamic.
The Airline Operators of Nigeria is asking the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority to approve a 40% fuel surcharge as an ameliorative measure to cushion the effects of the continued increase in the high price of Jet A1 on airline operations in the country. The implication is that airfares would technically go up and beyond what an average passenger can afford. In a letter written to the Director General of the NCAA, Captain Musa Nuhu, dated July 18, 2022, and signed by the AON President Dr. Abdulmunaf Yunusa Sarina, noted that in addition to the crippling effect of intermittent shortages of Jet A1, which price had risen from 200 naira per litre in February 2022 to 720 naira per litre. This has greatly increased the operational cost of airlines by over 130%. Yet airlines are unable to increase fares as well as suffer from the unavailability of foreign exchange to conduct their operations. Nigeria's oldest airline, Aero Contractors, has announced the suspension of its scheduled passenger services operations from this Wednesday, July the 20th, 2022, till further notice, citing harsh operating conditions as major reasons. This announcement is coming just over a month after the Airline Operators of Nigeria at a public forum announced that 3 of its members may cease operations due to the unavailable and high prices of Jet A1, among other challenges airlines have had to face this year alone.
The 737 Classic most of us use in Nigeria burns about 4,365 liters an hour. You multiply that by 714 naira, what would that give you? How many people are you carrying in the aircraft? You're already having about almost 4 million or 3.8 million fuel costs alone. The issues of fuel, which all over the world was known to have been taking 40 or 30% of cost of operations of every airline worldwide. In Nigeria, is now 120%. So this portends a lot of danger for the industry.
According to the airline, the suspension does not affect Aero's other businesses. The Approved Maintenance Organization, otherwise known as Aero MRO, the Approved Training Organization, ATO, also known as Aero Training School, or the Helicopter and Charter Services operations. Saudi Arabia has said it would open its airspace to all carriers, paving the way for more overflights to and from Israel, a decision welcomed by US President Joe Biden. The Saudi General Authority of Civil Aviation said the country's airspace was now open to all carriers that meet its requirements for overflights in line with international conventions that say there should be no discrimination between civil aircrafts. The decision will complement the efforts aimed at consolidating the kingdom's position as a global hub connecting 3 continents and to enhance international air connectivity. Bypassing Saudi Arabian airspace had added to flight times and increased fuel burn on some services to and from Israel. Despite the absence of official ties, Saudi Arabia had agreed in 2020 to allow Israel United Arab Emirates flights to cross its territory. A Ukrainian cargo plane carrying munitions from Serbia to Bangladesh crashed near the city of Kavala in northern Greece late Saturday, July the 16th. Drone images from the scene showed debris from the bulking Antonov AN-12 aircraft strewn in fields. Greek authorities said there were 8 crew members on board. Serbia's defense minister said the plane, operated by a Ukrainian company, was carrying 11.5 tons of products made by its defense industry, and the buyer was Bangladesh Defense Ministry. He said the crew members were killed. Greek authorities could not provide information on the aircraft's cargo, but the Special Disaster Response Unit and Army experts were being dispatched to investigate the scene. Residents nearby have been advised to keep windows and doors shut and avoid the area of the incident.
We return with one of the world's famous biannual aviation events, the Farnborough Air Show.
Aviation bosses gathered for the return of the Farnborough Air Show, aiming for a display of confidence after the devastation of COVID-19, even though the only records likely to be broken at the event are for sweltering temperatures. as temperatures set to rise above 40 degrees Celsius for the first time. Despite warnings people should not travel unless absolutely necessary, delegates battled crowded trains and shuttle buses to reach the show in Hampshire, southern England. By mid-morning, ice cream sellers at the show were doing brisk business.
It is hot.
Well, this is the first time since 2018 that Farnborough Air Show is taking place. The show was cancelled in 2020, obviously because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So now we're back. Aviation has changed quite a bit since then. Right now we are in a phase where demand is going up quite quickly. We are seeing a lot of airlines that are suddenly getting overwhelmed by the amount of passengers that suddenly want to fly. This summer there are lots of people that want to make up their holiday that they couldn't do during the COVID-19 pandemic due to travel restrictions and so on. So right now the airlines are actually quite busy.
Boeing, under pressure to make up ground lost to rival Airbus, AirPA unveiled broadly stable underlying civil airplane forecasts. It is seeking to shore up its troubled 737 MAX 10 and 777X jetliners with orders worth over $15 billion at list prices from Delta Airlines and Lufthansa.
Farnborough Air Show is a huge event. The entire aviation industry is here, basically. You have the big aircraft manufacturers. They're announcing deals with the airlines. You have all kinds of suppliers, General Electric, CFM, Pratt & Whitney, and so on. So it's really great to be able to meet again in aviation.
Demand for jets peaked in 2016 but remained buoyant until the pandemic crippled air transport. Now, travel is rebounding, passengers face long lines and some jets are back in demand. But the big-ticket orders that dominated past events are rarer as airlines repair balance sheets weakened by COVID-19 travel restrictions. Aerospace firms came under pressure from customers at the start of the show to stabilize fractured supply chains and feed resurgent jet demand, even as airlines and airports are struggling to smooth their own operations after the pandemic.
You're seeing a lot of electric developments on smaller sized aircraft. It is difficult to develop a large electric aircraft because of the weight of the batteries. So we are probably not going to see something like the 777 going electric, at least not anytime soon. Aircraft manufacturers are also experimenting with different technologies. Some are exploring hybrid technologies. Airbus, for example, wants to develop hydrogen-powered aircraft. That's something they are working on, that's in development. And they are looking to introduce their first test aircraft in maybe 10 years' time. So it's not something that we are going to see in the near future, but developments are certainly going on.
Industries worldwide are facing gaps in supply chains and labor shortages. Even the Farnborough Air Show itself has had trouble recruiting enough hospitality staff. Rise in defense spending will also be in focus as the industry gathers under the shadow of war in Ukraine. Aerospace leaders are expected to address concerns over supply chains and the spike in inflation that raise questions over both input costs and consumer demand.
In South Africa, Semakaleng Mathebula expertly fires up the burner, aims a giant blue-orange flame towards the multicolored balloon, and watches as it fills with hot air and begins to lift off the ground. The 27-year-old is South Africa's first black hot air balloon pilot and one of the few female pilots in the field. What used to feel unattainable is now part of her weekly routine.
Growing up, I had never seen a hot air balloon. There's no balloons flying over Harangua. My interests were cooking, accounting. At some point, I wanted to do media, but ballooning was not something that was in reach for me. When I was introduced to the sport, it was this new and exciting field. And when I found my feet, I realized it goes beyond marketing. You found me on the field trying to retrieve and crew with everyone else. You found me in the kitchen trying to make sure the guests are eating and they're all happy. And then when the opportunity presented itself by the scholarship with the Department of Sport and Recreation and the Balloon and Airship Federation of South Africa, BAFSA, all the pilots put my name forward and I applied, and here I was being a pilot.
Soon, buildings grew small and she was floating over rivers and farmland, as well as the sunrise, maneuvering the balloon and taking in the view against a yellow sky. Martha Buller found her way into ballooning by accident after struggling to find employment. She consulted a recruitment agency which helped her find a job as a marketing assistant at a hot air balloon tour company. She was smithing and later got a scholarship to do her pilot training from the Department of Sport and Recreation and the Balloon and Airship Federation of South Africa. She earned a license last year. A coach says this is the infusion of new blood into the arena.
We really need new blood, younger blood in the sports thing, because a bunch of us, as we're growing old, and we need to get new people in, and this is why it's so nice to have people like Sema and some of the other kids that's trained now and busy training, because it's new. It's not just new opportunities, it's new viewpoints and new aspirations and stuff like that. And we need to be able, I think years back ballooning was a very exclusive club, whereas now it's becoming more open and open.
Martha Buller also says she's keen to be an ambassador for the sport and hopes to bring in more youth and diversity. She will compete for the first time in the South African Hot Air Balloon Championship in June.
When we think of aviation, we think helicopters, we think your traditional planes, but ballooning is part of aviation. You are a pilot, it is an aircraft, and it is a field to explore. So I think that kept me going. I've always been motivated by letting people have a point of reference to something new, and it's an adventure. It teaches a lot of responsibility, and I developed a self-confidence in the sport that I would love to instill.
Officials of the United Nations and heads of government agencies, including Customs, Immigration and the Nigeria Civil Aviation Authority, are attending this security meeting on counter-terrorism in Abuja. The meeting, which was held behind closed doors, is essentially to upscale the capacity of relevant agencies of government on an effective way to manage terrorism threats.
This really is in response to the threats. We noticed that criminals and terrorists use of course, the airline industry to go either to combat, to conduct other crimes related to terrorism, and this is a phenomenon that's been observed not only in Nigeria but in the African region, in the world. So, of course, in Europe, in North America, everywhere across the globe, this is a phenomenon that terrorists have proven to use, and we need to be able to detect these individuals using their passport information. There's also the passenger name record data that can be helpful, but it really is in response to the threats.
We are facing certain security challenges, and you need to control your borders. You need to know who is coming in and going out of your country. So that's the number one advantage.
The United Nations Countering Terrorists Travel Program is an international program that generates biodata of travelers and syndicates same to track terrorists' movements.
It's a way of controlling the suspects. There is a package we call suspect index. Suspect is a watch list, and through that database, our system is able to synchronize and give us alert that this is person of interest.
Terrorism threats are a growing global concern that experts say requires strong international partnership to overcome.
This is where we touch down on this edition, and our hope is that authorities in the aviation industry will do their best to keep the industry afloat. I'm Bukola Joe Oketumbi. See you next time, God willing.